Welcome to The Warp. I'm Jack Rita, and I'm going to be talking today about the alternate timeline aliens that appear in Cosmic Odyssey, the 7th expansion for Cosmic Encounter, of which I am the designer, so full disclosure. So what are alternate timeline aliens, and how do they work, and what's the point of them? Well, Cosmic Odyssey comes with 42 more aliens to add to your set, but 12 of them are what we call alternate timeline aliens. The theme of Cosmic Odyssey is that you're traveling through space and time, through parallel universes of Cosmic Encounter, and you are encountering some things that may seem or look or sound familiar, but are actually different. And one of those things is going to be the alternate timeline aliens. So let's take a look at them, and then I'll talk a little bit about the design process. So the first one that we have is actually the zombie. So zombie is an alien that actually first appeared in the base set, and you will see that they're very similar. The art is not identical, a lot of similarities, but the big noticeable difference here is that the template is very different. So even if you're colorblind, you can see that this is not the same as the regular template for the aliens. So the effect is actually different as well. So let's start actually by looking at what the original zombie is and does, and then we'll look at the alternate timeline version. So zombie, you have the power of immortality. Whenever you should lose ships to the warp, use this power to instead return them to any of your colonies and keep using them. In addition, you may free any player's ships from the warp back to any colonies they have as part of a deal. So that's the alien of the zombie that's been around for 40 years. Everyone's used to it. What's different about the alternate timeline one? So this one, you have the power of reanimation. So that's already different. During each regroup phase, use this power to free all of your ships in the warp, sending them to one of your home planets, including a planet without a home colony. Additionally, you may free any number of another player's ships from the warp as a part of a deal with that player. So fundamentally very different. The first one, your ships don't go to the warp when they normally would. But the other one, they do go to the warp. However, during every regroup, all of your ships in the warp are freed, and they go to one of your home planets, even one where you don't have a colony. So why did I design this one to be different from the original? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. The original zombie doesn't collect compensation. You only get compensation. That's when you negotiate and another player attacks and you lose the encounter. For every ship that you send to the warp, you get to take a card at random from that player's hand. That is compensation. Well, if your ships don't go to the warp, you don't get the compensation. And that troubles a lot of players, especially because negotiating to take compensation is actually a tactical move that players like to be able to make. The other thing, of course, is if zombie has lost 3 home colonies, and if they've lost the encounter as a defense on what would have been their 3rd home colony to lose, then those ships do go to the warp and they've lost their power. So it's not great for zombie, and it actually is not as powerful as you might think at first blush. But the alternate timeline version of zombie is really hard to lose its power, because every regroup it's going to be reclaiming one of its home planets, and its ships are going to go to the warp in the first place, so it does get compensation. So that's why there is an alternate timeline version of the zombie. And that is one of the big reasons why I introduced the alternate timeline alien concept to Cosmic Odyssey, and it was to try to buff up some of the aliens that weren't powerful enough, or to take a look at some that maybe were a little too powerful and revisit that. So that is zombie. So let's take a look at the next one. So we have the original Macron from the base set again, and that's a simple one where each of your ships is worth 4 in an encounter, but it has this restriction where you can only send 1 ship in as a main player or an ally. And when Macron was one of the original aliens way back in the day, that usually wasn't a problem. You had your 1 ship, which was great. You're adding 4 to the encounter. You're maxing out every time, but with low risk. However, since then, there have been a lot of effects added to the game that let you target a single ship somewhere. And Macron, unfortunately, is a huge magnet for that effect. So it's really hard for them to bolster their foreign colonies. So the alternate timeline version of Macron is actually called Micron. It's a little bit different, so let's read the effect here. You have the power of mass numbers as a main player or ally. After allies are invited, use this power. Each of your ships is worth 2 for encounter totals, compensation, and rewards for the remainder of the encounter. So the ships are not as powerful. The original Macron, each ship was worth 4. Micron, each ship is worth 2. But the original Macron, that 4 was only for encounter totals. And for compensation and for rewards, they did get to collect 2 for those, but they were typically only had 1 ship in the encounter, so they were getting 2 rewards, maybe 2 compensation. They'd get more if they were losing on defense, but it was not common that Macron would lose on defense. Slightly more common with Micron, but they're getting double the compensation and double the reward. So they can send 4 ships in as a defensive ally, for example, to get rewards, and they're getting 8 rewards. So the ability to send 4 ships into the encounter for that 8 rather than a 4, and to get double the compensation, double the rewards, I think is what makes this version of Macron an improvement. So that is Micron. The next alien we're going to look at is Perfectionist. Now, this is an alien that first appeared in Cosmic Eons, which was the 6th expansion for Cosmic Encounter. And this is an example of an alien that was maybe a little bit too powerful. So the original Perfectionist, you have the power to be finicky. Whenever you add any cards to your hand, including when you're dealt your starting hand, you may use this power to reject any of those cards you don't want, stack them face down on this sheet in a reject pile, and then immediately replace the cards you discarded with new ones from the deck, but you may not discard and replace any of the replacements. You may offer cards from your reject pile as part of a deal, and when another player takes cards at random from your hand, you may use this power to force that player to take them from your reject pile instead. And then there's more text about if any player cannot draw cards because a deck and its discard pile have too few, you must discard 15 cards at random from your reject pile before that pile is reshuffled. So, pretty good alien, but a little bit out of whack. So the new Perfectionist is you have the power of idealism. Once per encounter. When you add any cards to your hand, you may use this power to place any of those cards face down on this sheet in a reject pile. You may also use this power when you are dealt your starting hand. So it's not getting replacements. It's just shedding those cards. It's like, these cards are not good enough, they're out. Then when another player would take cards from your hand at random, you may use this power to force them to take them from your reject pile, and you may offer cards from your reject pile as part of a deal. If any player cannot draw cards because of a deck, discard your entire reject pile and any number of cards from your hand. It's a little extra bonus. So it kind of balances it out. The first crack at Perfectionist was maybe a little out of whack, a little too much going on. Even if you compare the font size between them, the original Perfectionist for something that was not that complicated of a concept, but the text is so small because there's so many different things that it's explaining. So at this point, I'm going to explain too that when I decided to do the alternate timeline aliens, I wanted to have a number of aliens from the base set have an alternate version, and I wanted to touch on each of the expansions so that at least one from each one got this treatment. And as it turns out, even the alien, one of the only unique new alien in the 42nd anniversary edition, also got an alternate timeline alien. The other thing was that I wanted to have a nice cross-section, so 4 green alert, yellow alert, and 4 red alert aliens. So a nice distribution there. So that's the first one from an expansion. It's the one alien from Cosmic Eons that I did an alternate timeline version of. The next alien that we have, it's the last of our green alert, is Grumpus. And what's interesting is that the original Grumpus was actually yellow alert. I'm not sure why. It was not, it's not a very complex, maybe it's yellow alert because you needed to try to figure out why it was at all useful. And Grumpus is the alien, the one alien that I think most players agree was not a good alien. It's probably voted the worst alien out of the over 200. So original Grumpus, you have the power to grump. Whenever one of your colonies is removed from any planet, use this power. At the end of the current phase, every other player who has a colony on that planet must send one of his or her ships from that planet to the warp. And you do not lose your power from having too few home colonies. So, not that exciting. I mean, most of the time what's going to happen is Grumpus is going to be alone on a planet in their home system when they're being attacked. So, nothing's going to happen to because there's nobody else on that planet. And then your foreign colonies almost never get attacked in Cosmic Encounter. So those colonies, nothing's going to happen. It's really rare. It's maybe when you've sharing a colony, you've made a deal, you're sharing a colony at home, and then somebody's attacking that planet. I don't know, it just doesn't get used that much. So it was pretty ineffective alien. So here's the new Grumpus. You have the power to grump. As a main player, after you lose the encounter or fail to make a deal, use this power. Each player with a colony in your system must send one of their ships from your system to the warp, even if they just established that colony. If this causes a player to lose a colony, you may establish a foreign colony on any planet in that player's home system. And then you do not lose your power because of having too few home colonies. So this is a Grumpus with a much bigger bite. It fires a lot more often. Plus, it has the benefit of being able to establish a colony. And I've seen Grumpus actually win the game that way. They lost an encounter, and then players didn't have enough ships in that system. And that's a case where if the old Macron was in there, they'd be screwed. So that is from Cosmic Storm. And Cosmic Storm is the only expansion that had more than one alternate timeline alien. It has two. We'll get to the other one here in just a second. So that is that's it for the green alert. Even though the old Grumpus was yellow, there's 4 green alert aliens. We're getting into the yellows now. So we're going to start with Locust. And Locust was an alien that was in Cosmic Incursion. And it's funny because it's an alien that the first time somebody reads the original effect, they go, oh, wow, this is neat. This is a really cool alien, scary. But in practice, it turned out to be not very effective. I like to tease it as the alien with the power to not have allies. Let's look at what the original did. You have the power to devour. At the start of any regroup phase, if you have a foreign colony on a planet by yourself, that is, there are no other ships on the planet with you, use this power to devour the planet, removing it from the game and placing it on the sheet. Your ships on that planet return to your other colonies. Each planet you have devoured counts as a foreign colony towards victory for you, even if your power is later lost or stolen. So it's a great way to have points that you can't lose, although losing points is something that rarely happens in Cosmic Encounter. It's hard to lose your foreign colonies because nobody wants to give up their turn trying to chase you off of it rather than advance their own score. But that's the thing, is that you have to be on that planet by yourself. No allies. So if you've brought allies along, you're going to establish a colony on a planet together, and then you're not going to use your alien power. So the original Locust was a bit of a dud. So here's how the new Locust works. You have the power to consume as the offense or an offensive ally. So right away, it's working as more than just... the other one, you could be on a planet by yourself even though you weren't the offense, but that doesn't happen very often. So here as the offense or an offensive ally, after you win the encounter, if the targeted planet has no ships on it other than the defense's ships, use this power to consume the planet. Remove the consumed planet from the game and place it on the sheet. Send all ships on that planet to the warp. Each of your allies may either land their ships on another planet of their choice in the targeted system or return those ships to their colonies. Your ships return to your colonies. And then again, each planet that you consume is a point that you can't lose. So here, what I did was I basically borrowed a page from how Filth works. So Filth is an alien that can't share a planet with any other players. Too stinky. So when Filth is the offense, they can invite allies, but when they land on the planet, Filth lands on the targeted planet, and the allies can land on any other planet. So I thought that would actually be a pretty effective use for Locust. So he does the same thing and then devours the planets. And you get the benefit of, you can send your 4 ships in as the Locust. Those 4 ships are going to then come back to your colonies, or they can go wherever you need them to go. So you get a double benefit here. And it's nice that it works as an ally, too. So somebody brings you along, you devour that planet that was targeted, the rest of them land on a different planet. It's a good alien, I think. All right, next we have Daredevil. So Daredevil is the alternate timeline alien from Cosmic Dominion. And Cosmic Dominion, the 5th expansion, that was the fan expansion. It's the first one that I was working on officially as a designer. I was a contributor and a kind of a consultant on the base game in the first 3 expansions. Didn't consult at all on Cosmic Storm. But with Cosmic Dominion, Fantasy Flight allowed the fans to basically run that expansion. So Bill Martinson, Jefferson Crow, and I were the 3 designers on it. We curated a lot of alien ideas from a lot of other people. So there weren't a lot of aliens that jumped out at me. This is not a good alien. But the original Daredevil could have been a little bit better. So let's take a look at it. The original one, you have the power of risk. As a main player or ally, after encounter cards are revealed, you may use this power to discard 1 attack card with a value from 1 to 8 from your hand and subtract that value from your side's total. So already it's a little bit strange. It seems like you're trying to lose. But as a main player or ally, when your side wins an encounter by 4 or less, each player on your side receives rewards equal to the number of ships they have in the encounter, in addition to any other benefits for winning. So Daredevil is trying to win by just a little bit. And that's why you're discarding that attack card from your hand, is if you were winning by a lot, you're trying to basically lower that margin so that you can get the rewards. And it's a really neat concept. There was no alien that did anything quite like that. And I liked that whole playing with the risk. And you had the sort of a fringe benefit of you could basically just get rid of a low attack card from your hand, even if it wasn't going to help you get those rewards. And there was the soft benefit of people might be more likely to invite you as an ally. It's enticing to say, all right, yeah, Daredevil, come along, and if we win by a little bit, then I'll get some extra rewards out of winning that. And it does make the reinforcements a little more interesting because you can play reinforcements on either side of an encounter. So if your side has won by, say, 7, and you have a +2 reinforcement, you could play that on the other side so that the margin is a little bit smaller. But winning by 4 or less in reality turned out to be pretty hard to pull off, even if you could discard a low attack card from your hand to help try to shore up that. So with the new Daredevil, you have the power of peril. As a main player or ally, after encounter cards have been revealed, you may use this power to discard 1 attack card from your hand. So now there's no restriction on the value. You can discard any attack card. Subtract this value from your side's total. And then as a main player or ally, if your side wins the encounter by 5 or less, each player receives rewards equal to the number of ships they have in the encounter. So just one more point, but now it might be a little bit easier if you could, say, discard a 10 or 12 if you've won by a lot. And it makes the math of trying to get the reinforcements in there a little bit better. Time will only tell if the new Daredevil is more effective. I would like to point out something that's interesting is that the art here for the original Daredevil was actually not meant for Daredevil. It was art that was commissioned for an alien that ended up not being in the game at all. It was for, I believe, for Swindler, or a Swindler-like alien. And what they did with the art in Cosmic Odyssey is for all these alternate timeline aliens, they made little modifications. Some of them are more subtle than others. But now Daredevil, because he's all bandaged up and stuff, it actually looks a little bit more like a Daredevil. So yeah, some of the changes, again, if you look at, that's Locust, the new Locust, the old Locust. So it's the same art. They just did some interesting things with the colors. So that's the story there. Let's go on to the next one. It is Brute. So the original Brute, the other alien from Cosmic Storm. So Brute, I believe, as Grumpus was universally accepted as the worst alien because it was too weak, Brute, I believe, is universally accepted as the worst alien for being too strong. It's really just overpowered, in my opinion. So let's look at what the original Brute did. You have the power to threaten. As a main player or ally, after alliances are formed, you may use this power to threaten one player on the opposing side. That player must either allow you to look at their hand of cards and take a card of your choice, or remove all of their ships from the encounter back to their colonies. And if you remove a main player, they continue with no ships, but they can't really, if they're the offense, they can't land. So this was an alien. The reason that I didn't like Brute is because, I mean, it's super powerful. It works as a main player and an ally. It gets to look at somebody's hand, and that's something that the mind gets to do, and that's all the mind gets to do, and that's the whole point of that alien. So you've got an alien here that is doing exactly what the mind does. Then it also gets to take any card it wants from that player's hand if they don't want to be booted out of the encounter, which is yet another thing that Brute can do. So it was like three things. It was too much going on, too strong of an alien. I removed Brute from my set entirely, but now we have a new Brute. It's a kinder, gentler Brute. As you can see, he's covered in flowers. So kind of perfect for that. Let's look at what the new Brute does. You have the power to pressure as an ally. So this one doesn't work as a main player. It only works as an ally. After alliances are formed, you may use this power to pressure one player on the other side. That player must either remove all of their ships from the encounter and return them to colonies, or allow you to look at a number of random cards in their hand up to the number of ships they have in the encounter and take one card of your choice. So you can see right away that it is tempered in a couple of ways. First, with the ally. Second is that you're looking at random cards, not all of them. And third, the number of cards is based on the number of ships that they have sent in there. So that player, the victim, basically has a little more agency over what is going on. If they know, I mean, they know that if Brute is in on the other side, that they're going to be pressured. So they can send fewer ships, knowing that Brute will only get to see a couple of the cards in their hand and take one. So there's a little bit more strategy involved. It's not just you being pummeled for being in the game. So I like this Brute better. Definitely is going to replace the old Brute. And then our final yellow alert alien is Demon. So Demon is an alien. Now this version of Demon here, it actually started off as a promo, and you can see right there it is a Cosmic Con promo. So this was a contest that Fantasy Flight and Future Pastimes sponsored for Cosmic Con, which was a Cosmic Encounter themed weekend-long event that Fantasy Flight held at their headquarters a few years ago. Part of it was to celebrate the release of Expansion 5, which is the fan expansion. And we had a contest where we knew that we were never going to publish the original Demon effect from the Eon and Mayfair editions of Cosmic Encounter, because it was an alien that, again, it took away too much agency from a player. You were able to possess another player's ships, taking over for them as the offense, and you could just keep doing that whenever you weren't the offense or the defense. So it was kind of a drag, and a lot of players just didn't like Demon. I know that Kevin Wilson had no intention of ever including Demon in there because of that, at least not in its original form. So a couple of other aliens had that sort of effect, but Peter and Bill really wanted there to be an alien called Demon. So we had this contest for fans to design their own take on it, and Superfan Robin was the winner of it. So they published this as a print on demand, and it's pretty good quality. I mean, you can tell it's slightly different. It's really hard to tell, though. It fits in pretty well. And the effect for the original Demon, you have the power to possess. As a main player, before allies are invited, you may use this power to take possession of the hand of any other player except your opponent. Place those cards face down on the sheet. They're not part of your hand, but you may use cards from here as though they were in your hand. If a card played from the sheet would return to the hand, your hand after use, return it to its previous owner instead, and then at the end of the encounter, they get their hand back. So I think the reason why this got some criticism is because it does a lot of what Doppelganger does. It's not really exactly the same, but there's a lot of overlap. If this were a Venn diagram, there'd be a lot of space in the middle there. Still pretty good alien on its own. This is one of the few aliens that I might actually keep both versions in the collection, and I'll explain how you can do that for those aliens that you do want to keep both versions. You might want to keep Macron and Micron. You might even want both zombies. I doubt you'll want both of the Grumpuses, maybe the brutes if you're that kind of a crazy person. But here's the new demon. So even if scary, I love this artwork on both versions. This one a little more intense. The effect for the new demon, it more closely resembles the original effect. So you have the power to dominate. If you are not a main player or ally, after encounter cards are selected but before they were revealed, you may use this power to discard an attack card from your hand. After encounter cards are revealed, if your card is lower than both revealed attack cards, each player sends one of your ships to the warp from any of your colonies. So you don't actually want it to be lower. If your card is higher than a main player's revealed attack card, you may dominate ships of that player's allies. After the outcome is determined, you may take up to 4 of your ships from one of your colonies and use them to replace any of those allies' ships in the encounter on a 1-for-1 basis before those ships land on the planet or their owners gain rewards. Dominated ships are captured and placed on this sheet. Then the encounter is completed normally. And after you draw a new hand, send all ships on the sheet to the warp and gain 1 reward for each player whose ships were on your sheet. So there's a little bit of a gamble here. If you discard a card that's too low, you're going to lose ships. But if you end up playing something that's higher, you can end up getting an extra foreign colony if you're dominating on the offense, or picking up rewards if you're dominating on the defense. Plus, you're displacing somebody from being able to do that. You do have to dominate from one of your colonies, so you want to try to keep a few colonies where you have a number of ships on there, more than just 1 or 2. So a nice cluster of ships. So a different effect. It definitely has a connective tissue to the original demon, but again, it's going to only affect the allies. It's not affecting the offense. So you're not really losing your turn, essentially, which is what the original demon did. You basically, I had my 1 turn to go in there, and then you took over the colony, so I get nothing. So that is demon, and that is the last of the yellow alert aliens. So we have 4 left. It's red alert, and we're going to start with Masochist. So we have the 2 Masochists here. They're into slightly different things, as you can see. The original one, an alternate win alien that wins if all of their ships are in the warp or captured or out of the game. And the new one basically works the same way. The big difference is that the new one cannot have their ships removed from the warp against their will. So you're not worried about healer anymore. You're not worried about Mobius tubes or a rift card being played on you. So it makes this Masochist a lot more competitive, and that's basically it. That's the story there with Masochist. So I think it's a much better version. It helps to deal with some of the issues that people had with Masochist. To go along with Masochist, we have Sadist. So Sadist is also an alternate win alien. This is an alien that was originally in Cosmic Conflict. So the original Sadist, you have the power to inflict pain. At the start of any player's regroup phase, before the offense retrieves a ship from the warp, use this power to win the game if all other players have lost at least 8 ships. Lost ships include ships in the warp, removed from the game, or captured. You can still win the normal way. So if you're lucky enough to start an encounter and everybody has got a bunch of ships in the warp, you can win as Sadist. He doesn't really have any control over what's going on, and it's tough to pull off. It does have the restriction of don't use with zombie or healer, and sadly, that was a restriction that did have to carry over with the new Sadist, just because it's just too it's too much to deal with. But here's how the new one works. Whenever another player has at least 8 ships in the warp, captured, or out of the game, place a token under that player's colony marker. So you're tagging the colony marker that goes along the score track there, so that you don't have to wait until everybody has got all of their ships in the warp. As soon as they hit that threshold, they're tagged. At the end of the resolution phase, if all other players have a token under their colony marker, it uses power to win the game. Additionally, though, this Sadist, as a main player or ally, after your side wins the encounter, if any players on the other side would lose fewer than 3 ships to the warp, use this power to force each player to lose 1 additional ship to the warp. So this Sadist is some more sadistic, and it's needling you. If you haven't lost enough ships, you're going to lose 1 more. So I really like that this one has some more that it can do to help move it towards this win condition. Next, we've got Void, and Void is a base set alien, and you can see the new Void has got a little something going on in there, so it's not utterly void, but it's mostly void. You'll see what I mean. So the original one, you have the power to eradicate. As a main player, when you win an encounter, use this power to remove the losing ships from the game rather than sending them to the warp. So again, it's another one of those aliens, very scary on paper, but you got to be the main player as the Void and then win, and then the ships are removed from the game, but it has this extra bit here where a player cannot be reduced to fewer ships than the number of foreign colonies needed to win the game. So you're not going to be utterly removed from the game. There's no threat of that. You'll always have at least 5 ships left. So not a bad alien, but I felt it could be a little bit better. So the new Void, you have the power to absorb as a winning main player or ally. So this one fires more often. All ships that would be sent to the warp during resolution are captured and placed on the ship instead. You may send a player's ships from the ship to the warp as part of a deal. So this one, there's no restriction about how, like, once you get to 15, you have to stop. You could utterly capture all of a player's ships, but it does have this sort of safety net plan B where you can give a player their ships back as part of a deal, which, again, it fosters the idea of let's make a deal with Void, especially if they've captured some of my ships. So it has the original scariness in there, and it can fire more often than it normally would. It doesn't need the little text about what do I do if I've got too many of my ships out. And so, yeah, you can get the ships back. You're making deals, which is good for Void. So I like it better. I think it's more versatile and actually potentially more scary. And that brings us to the last alien. This is an alien that was in Cosmic Alliance, and it's Schizoid. So Schizoid, the original Schizoid had a set of cards that were the same size as your normal cards from like your Cosmic deck, with some different win conditions. So take the 6 Schizoid cards, choose one of them, and place it face down in the sheet. Take the other 5 and place them face down in the deck near the sheet. You have the power to alter reality. The Schizoid card that is face down on the sheet lists the victory conditions the players must fulfill in order to win the game with a normal victory. So you can't win the game with just 5 foreign colonies and call it a day. You have to win with the card that Schizoid has chosen, and it is face down, so you don't know what it is. The conditions on this card replace the normal victory conditions. Alternate victory conditions are not affected, so Masochist and Sadist, for instance. Any player who has completed the normal victory condition may play a Cosmic Zap on you at any time to win the game. So a little bit clunky there. There's no really you using the power, but, not a big deal. Each time you are on the losing side of an encounter, the winning main player randomly chooses a card from the Schizoid deck and reveals it to the winners of the encounter. Then you shuffle it back in there. So if you beat Schizoid in an encounter, you get to look at one of the cards that they didn't pick, and you can show it to your allies, and then it gets shuffled in. And the next time, you might end up picking up the same one again. So it was okay. It's not a bad alien. The original one, you were making up your own conditioning and writing it down, and that got a little bit ridiculous. And at the end of the game, you'd realize somebody had written down a condition that nobody could fulfill, and then there was plates thrown and stuff like that. And so the new version uses essence cards. Essence cards are cards that were first brought into the game in Cosmic Eons. They're mini cards, and in fact, I think I've got one right here. Yeah, so these are this is an essence card for another alien cosmos, and you can see how it is compared to a normal one. So, the original Schizoid was made before essence cards were introduced. Obviously, it would have been an essence card, so I decided it needed to be one. And I made a couple other slight changes. So let's take a look here. Game setup, choose one condition card from your essence card set and place it face down on the sheet. Shuffle the remaining 7 condition cards. So there's more conditions here than the original Schizoid. Shuffle the remaining ones, form a deck, place them face down near it, and you are ignoring normal essence card rules. You have the power to shift reality. As a main player, after you lose an encounter or fail to make a deal, the opposing main player draws a card at random from your condition deck and places it face up on the sheet. So that's a big change here, is that everybody gets to see it, and then you're not going to be drawing the same one over and over again, potentially. You figure some of this stuff out. And that's what I've found in practice, is that by the time you got to the point with the original Schizoid where you could actually start to eliminate possibilities, the game had long already ended. So, and usually for Schizoid. So there are more conditions now, so it takes a little bit longer. And then, when any player would win the normal, non-alternate victory conditions, use this power to prevent the win. So you're actually using your power, and it helps to figure out, when am I cosmic zapping you? And when any player would win by one of your conditions, use this power to declare them the winner. So you can cosmic zap yourself when they're about to win to say, no, you don't win. So that is it for Schizoid. And I wanted to talk a little bit about combining them in there. So what's really interesting is, as the template for the alien sheets are different, so is the template for the flare cards. So as you can see, these flares are obviously different from the normal flares. So even if you have, the original Daredevil and the new Daredevil in, by the flare if you've got the flare that corresponds to your alien or the other alien, if they're both in there. So I love that Fantasy Flight did that. It was something I hadn't actually thought of, and was very happy to see that in there. So again, if you want to combine them, you can do it. As I've said, I've replaced all of the originals with the new versions. They're better versions. I like them. Although I might keep one or two of them, just because it's fun having the double flares in there. So that is it for the alternate timeline aliens. As I mentioned, there are 30 other aliens in the set, but I'll take a look at those in a different video. Cosmic Odyssey, it's the 7th expansion. There's a lot in there. I like to describe it as 3 expansions rolled into one. It's got a terrific campaign mode that you can play. It's got an expansion of all the previous expansions, and then it has several new modules, moons, lucre, evolutions, and some other interesting tidbits. So check that out. It's a great expansion, and thanks for watching.